recording. So upgrades for 1805 are going to go ahead and begin in November and will continue throughout the month. We will start the upgrades after 8 p.m. your local time or the later of when you close. So if you're open until 9 o'clock, don't worry, we're not going to start your upgrades until after you are closed. We will go ahead and push a notice to your staff client the week prior, letting you know when your upgrade is going to happen. So everyone will be aware of that, and we do leave that up the day after your upgrade with a reminder that you need to clear your cache. That's all you need to do. So just go ahead and clear your cache the next morning and you'll be all set to go. So if you'd like to see the schedule for all of our upcoming webinars, you can go ahead and take a look at this link here, bywatersolutions.com education. It is one that has been sent out to the Bywater Partners list, and this has a list of all of our webinars, and it will also include the ones that it'll also include links to the recorded webinars. So you can see we've had some of them already, and then we have some more that are upcoming. If you missed our OPAC Public User Services upgrade, we have another one coming up on the 24th, and then we also have a circulation one that's going to be happening tomorrow, and then again the 23rd. Tech services, we've had one. We'll have another one on the 22nd. Today is the first session of administration and reports, and then we'll have another one on the 25th. So we'll be all set to go with all of those. Something else that's really important to be aware of is that on this page too, we also have our upgrade notes. Now this is really important for y'all to take a look at. In these webinars, we try to cover the things that we think that most everyone is going to need to know about. But this page has a link to everything that is changing in 1805. So it's a really great way to go ahead and take a look at everything and see what's happening beyond what we mentioned. So we mentioned the things that we think are the most important or they're going to impact the most libraries, but there are going to be some other things that you definitely want to take a look at. We do have some blog posts and videos that we've already made, and we're going to be creating more. And then here are those recorded webinar sessions. Okay, so again, that's going to be a really helpful one that you can go back to if you've missed any of these, or if any of your colleagues want to view them and didn't have the chance, you'll be able to go ahead and take a look at those. Something else that's helpful too is we also keep the questions and answers that we get during these webinars, and we go ahead and post them so everyone can take a look and see what's been asked. Sometimes we're able to include the answers to those in future webinars, but sometimes we're not, so we want to make sure that we have all that information shared. You all want to know what everyone else is asking, so we make sure that we go ahead and have that information posted. And then we have all the bugs that are addressed. There's a lot of stuff in 1805. So this links to all the information about those sorts of things. So everything is there if you want to take a look at it. I strongly encourage you to. It is going to be really helpful to be aware of what's going to be happening throughout 1805 upgrade. Okay. And something that y'all saw that we started off with is our new website. So we're very excited to have this. Little freshening of the site. Of course, the most important part is going to be the education section, because that's where you're going to find all the information that the three educators, Andrew, Kelly, and myself, create and share posts about, things like that. And of course, the first thing on our education page is the Q&A from our upgrade webinars. So we want to make sure that that information is very easy to find. You can go ahead and search education just right there. So a very easy way to be able to find everything that we've got in there. Do want to point out the About section. If you head down a little bit, you will find some basic information about us. We are self-professed nerds, whatever you want to call us. Koha, the Bywater Partners, are in 46 different US states. So there's a neat little piece of trivia for you. Gives the history of the company, and then more importantly, it gives pictures so that you may see our names and emails. The educators, you do see us quite often, but for everyone else, you can see who you're talking to when you're doing tickets and things like that. So there's pictures of all of our amazing staff team that you're working with. Okay, so take a look at our new website. Let us know if there's any questions that you have. And again, very important ways to contact us if you ever need assistance. Okay. All right. So, 1805. We are all very excited about this. There is a lot of changes. And again, we're going to focus specifically on administration and reports in today's session. One of the things that you'll immediately notice is that you do have the ability to go ahead and add custom text to this login screen, and that is done through system preferences. One of the most exciting things in 1805 is the ability to create hierarchical groups. So in the past, we've been able to go ahead and search by library groups, but now you have more control over those things. So you can see right here under library groups, we have this new section. Okay. And then you can see that we went ahead and created some new groups. So when you're adding a group, which you've already done, we've got some options here. And if you take a look at your actions and go into edit, you can see right here that you can name the title you can name the group, you can describe what it does, and then you have 3 different features that you can choose to have engaged or not. So you have the limit patron data access by group. So that means that only libraries within that group would be able to see patron data for those groups. You can use it for the OPAC search groups, and then you can also use it for staff search groups. So you've got some abilities if you've got multiple libraries that are in your groups or in your installation that you can go ahead and add some of those things. And you can also create subgroups and more subgroups and more subgroups. So you can create a whole lot of different subgroups. So this will allow you to base groups on whatever you want to do. So you can really have some fun about that. Custom text on the login screen. Yes, I will make sure that I circle back around to that one. Okay. And then again, for the groups, very easy to add a library or to add a subgroup. So for those of you, I know not everyone's going to be interested in doing that, but for those of you that do work with multi-library consortiums and things like this is going to be a nice little feature to be able to work with that. And I'm not sure if we have any libraries that this applies to, but if you have libraries that cross time zones, you can now allow Koha to have different time zones on the same server. So you can go ahead and set this up per instance and can go ahead and configure that. So if that's something that does apply to you, you can go ahead and set those up. Probably the downside with this webinar is a lot of this is stuff that we can't necessarily show, we just talk about. So hopefully we'll be able to show you quite a lot, but some of this is just going to be things that we're going to mention as we talk about. So this is for all of you folks that are using CAS authentication. Usually schools are the ones that we see using this. This is just a small little security update, and basically when you used to sign out of Koha, it would leave the patron signed into everything else that they were using. Now, when you sign out of one of those sites, it'll sign them out of all of them. So just a neat little feature that patrons aren't going to have to remember to go ahead and sign out individually from all of those. It's going to be one and done, and you'll be all set for that. Okay. So we love that Koha has a self-checkout module. I know a lot of libraries have set up their own custom self-checkout modules, and they really enjoy using those, and the patrons really do too. Because let's be real, there are days that all of us just don't want to talk to anybody. We just want to get our books and go home. So I know a lot of libraries are using those self-checkouts. We now have the ability to do self-check-in. So it is system preferences, and you just go ahead and set up those self-check-in system preferences, which we'll hop right into. Of course, you are going to want to spell that right. So here we go. If we just search for self-check in our system preferences, you will see that we have a whole section on the self-check-in module. And so you can include, just like you do with the self-checkout, additional HTML. You can turn it on, and you do just have that / extension that you would add to your base URL to be able to activate that. You can choose how long it resets the screen. And then you do have the option to include CSS or JavaScript on that. So while this is a great step forward, in playing with this, we've discovered that it's not where we need it to be for most libraries. So this is a tool that is in development. But basically, I am at the URL, and I went ahead and logged in with my self-check username and password like we have for the self-checkout. And then basically all patrons would need to do is go ahead and scan that item number in. Okay. And then they'll need to click the check-in button. So not entirely what our patrons are used to as far as when they're doing scanning at stores and things like that. Oh, and busted. I changed my IP right before I set this up. I forgot to change that. So I'm here in Florida, a little bit north of Orlando, and every afternoon this time of year, our internet gets a little bit wonky. So I went ahead and changed over to a hotspot so I know I'd have a standalone internet, and I forgot to relog into everything. So, okay, so it went ahead and got that one item, the 39401. And it is checked in. Now, ideally, we would want our patrons to go ahead and click on finish at this point, but we know that they probably won't. But this is part of that timeout. Well, it will take you back to that basic self-check-in screen. Okay. Let's see if I can go ahead and put this other item in. Okay, so I've added 2 more. I'm going to check these in. Okay, and then again, you'll see that one was checked in and one was not, and you do get the error message to see, please see the library staff for assistance. So it does tell you if there is an error. However, it does not tell you if there is a hold waiting on that item. So for most libraries that allow holds, this is going to be an issue because you're going to have to scan all of those books again to trigger that hold. So that is something to be aware of. You know, it may work for your library, it may not. If you are one of the libraries that does not have holds, like I know some special libraries do not permit holds, then the self-check-in might be something that definitely would work for you in its format as it is now. But if not, that is something that we are hoping to see developed. And so we do have a bug about that already. So we do encourage you to go ahead and go to Bugzilla and add comments and thoughts about that. Developers really want to be aware of what's happening and how they can make things better. So no, George, it does not trigger any of those things. The only messages you get are checked in or not checked in. So it is an issue that it's the staff would still need to check everything in again. So one of those things that may or may not work for you. I know a lot of libraries do double scanning, so this may be a way to get the patrons to do the first scan, and then you would just do the second scan. But yeah, definitely something to be aware of with that.
Whoa,
but let's focus on the positive.
Oh,
that
double scans.
Yes, lots of people double scan.
No. Donna, we have another question about working the self-check-in module for consortiums.
Ooh, that's a really good question.
I guess it would depend on if they had separate URLs, their OPEX had separate URLs, or they were sharing one URL.
If you had the separate URLs, I think you would probably be okay because it's just the extension onto that base URL. So it should be okay, but I would be curious to try that out. So if anyone wants to experiment with us, we'd love to see how that works. Any volunteers? And that's true, George. It does depend on where the user is logged in. And we are noticing some things more and more with that depending on what the user is, it's going to reflect on the receipt and different things like that. So it would be interesting to see how it is set up with those, if you could do multiple self-check patrons and see how that works. So that would be something that we definitely want to explore a little bit more. And like I said, this is just kind of the first step for self-check-in. There's a lot to be developed with it, and the more feedback we can get from the community, the stronger and better this sort item is going to be. So let's go ahead and make sure we all add our comments to it so we can go ahead and get this to be absolutely awesome. Okay, so that's the self-check-in. Okay, so there's support for one of the bugs that's been added is support for Unicode supplementary characters. Basically, what this does is it adds the ability to use emojis for tagging, which we've talked about in a couple of other webinars, which is really kind of a fun little thing if you haven't seen that. But it also does support things like supplementary Japanese characters or Chinese characters, things like that. And basically, for all you database nerds out there, it changes the structure definition to make use of UTF-8 MB4 encoding instead of the UTF-8. Okay. We believe that we only have a couple of partners that are using this, and we think we have reached out to those that are. But the system preference, we finally got rid of one system preference, even though we've added a whole bunch more. The system preference that has been removed is check digit. And really, this is a very old system preference, and really it's just in as far as setting up verification of numbers. So not something that most people are going to be aware of, but if you are one, do know about this. It should not, George. George is asking if the UTF-8 change is going to affect reports, and it should not. But I'm also not the report expert, so that is going to be something I'm making a note of to double check, because we definitely don't want to cause any issues with that sort of thing. Oh, George will test it. Perfect. Thank you, George. Okay. So one of the things when we're setting up new partners on Koha, we often mention with the logs, there's one log that we suggest people not turn on because it just gets very big and bulky. And it's a very helpful log, so a lot of folks are disappointed. So we're very excited to let y'all know that you can now turn this on. And that's the cataloging log. And basically what it does is it tracks any changes to bibliographic or item records. We do need to have this text updated. It used to include check-ins and check-outs, and basically it made things spammy, is the way it was described. So now those have been separated, and so it is truly just tracking the cataloging changes to bib or item records. So if that's something that you've turned off with 1805, again coming in November, that is something that you can feel free to go ahead and turn back on and just take a look at it. You know, it should not impact you know, speed or anything like that, but definitely take a look at it and see if that's something that's going to be helpful for y'all. And then you can go ahead and turn that on yourself, and it's all set to go. So something that's kind of neat to be able to track that information. And on the really cool side too is that means there's a whole lot more reports that you can use now too, including some of my favorites under the reports wiki, catalogers gone wild. So there's some neat reports in there that you can go ahead and pull based on using that cataloging log. Another little change that a lot of patrons will probably appreciate if they're like me and always forget to turn my phone off at night, and the SMS messages come through or the email messages process at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I get that little ping. There is now the ability to process only one type of message for a given run. So for instance, we can go ahead and process that email notice queue overnight and have that run at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but then we can also make that change to have SMS messages only sent during the day. So there is that neat little feature that we can go ahead and adjust that. You know, so that's a nice push to be able to go ahead and change some things.
Donna, we do have another question about that cataloging log.
Mm-hmm.
For consortiums that have possibly lots more catalogers and more records, is that going to get still too large for the server?
So my answer is it shouldn't do, but what I would suggest is the larger you are, I would say talk to us and let us go ahead and clean that out more often. Instead of keeping, you know, 6 months worth or something, maybe we bring it down to 2 months worth of data. You know, so, but I would say go ahead and talk to us about that, and let's see what we can figure out as far as what's a good medium to be able to keep that data for you, that it's still useful, but without logging down your system. So, George, that would be so George is asking about delaying the SMS messages. That is something that you would need to open a ticket for, because that would be something that we add in the back end with the crons for the process message queue. Okay. So one of our other favorites, I know everyone loves this, are the notices. And one of the most common questions we get asked is, can I see what that notice is going to look like? And the answer is kind of now. So for 3 of the notices, the check-in, the check-out, and the hold slip, you do have the ability to go ahead and see a preview of that notice. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the check-out notice and show you how that works. Okay, so here we are in our checkout notice, and if I come into our email function, you can see now at the bottom I have a preview function. I have a preview button down there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that preview. And it will give you the error message that you have not added any data. Okay, so it's not a strict preview. It's not just a look at the framework. It is actually looking for specific data. So here up in the top, it says data for the preview, and it shows you what it's looking for. So it's looking for barcode, pipe, borrower number. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and add and borrower number. I'm thinking I pulled a barcode, not a borrower number. So let's see what happens when I click to preview. Yeah, it didn't like that, did it? All right. Let's try that one. There we go. Okay, so this is going to go ahead and show you some basic information here. So this will show you the original version that was in your box that you can edit. You can see the original message as it's being rendered. So the following items have been checked out, past tense, thank you for visiting this branch. So this is a quick way to be able to see how those things are filling in. And then down here in the converted version, you'll see that the coding structure is a little bit different. Instead of using the hungry alligators, it's using the brackets, and this is for the conversion to the template toolkit. And so this is really just an option to see how that's going to appear in that updated version of the coding, which is slowly being worked on. So, but you can see that they are all showing the same. So again, it's only available on the 3 check-in, check-out, and hold slip, but it's a start, and it will still kind of give you an idea of how things are going to show when you're setting stuff up. So that preview button is a neat little feature to be able to see kind of how things are changing. I do know that they are working on getting more notices in there and making it look a little bit prettier also. So we'll see how that's going. Okay. So notice previews, something again we're very excited for. Okay. Let's go ahead and hop over into reports. And the first thing that you'll notice is it looks so much better than it did before. A lot easier to be able to see and move through things. So much better view. One of the things that I really like is you can search by keyword right here. So instead of having to go into your saved reports, you can search by keyword right from this front screen and get the results that you're looking for. So a neat little feature there. And then again, very clear, your create guided reports, create from SQL, and use saved. So we're going to go ahead and just hop right into use saved. Okay. So a couple of additions here. You can see that there's now been added the column visibility button that we've seen in some of the other releases. And so this is going to let me go ahead and hide some things in here without having, so I don't have to view them. So for instance, if I don't want to see the JSON URL, which you can hide it here, we do have jQuery that we can, that is posted on the wiki that can be added to your site to hide it also. But if there's things that you just really don't want to see, you can go ahead and hide those through your column visibility. You also have the option for Excel, CSV, copy, and print. You'll see these buttons in multiple places. They've been added everywhere that they can to make things a little bit easier for people that are using it to be able to do things. We got very excited when we first saw this because we thought that we'd be able to, you know, go ahead and make an Excel spreadsheet of all of our reports and the SQL. Unfortunately, it just gives you a spreadsheet of what you see here. It does not include the SQL at this point, just a list of what you have here. But that could be handy so that you can go ahead and have one list of all of these reports and see what's happening with those. So that is something that you could go ahead and add if you needed to. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of our reports. Okay, so I've got a lost book report here that I'm going to go ahead and run. Okay. And so this is kind of neat that we have, oops, and I pulled the wrong one. Let me go back. We'll come back to that one because that's really exciting too. Okay, so this is kind of neat. It allows for reuse of parameters on SQL. So before you would have to pick that parameter twice, now you can go ahead and just do it once. So it's a really neat feature. If there are times when you need it for, when you do need to have that same thing but from two different options, you can see what we did here is we just changed that to, took the H off of branch, and that went ahead and changed it. So as long as those labels are a little bit different, you can go ahead and have that same thing in there, or you can just have it set in there twice. So let me go back and actually show the SQL on this one, and you can see what I'm, a little bit better what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see here that we went ahead and took just that H off of the branch libraries. So if I put that back in there and update my SQL, another neat little feature, notice that it kept me on that page. So now when you're editing a report, it keeps you where you are instead of having to go back through that process again, okay? So I've got that. I'm gonna go ahead and run that report again. Okay, and you see that now I only have that one parameter that I have to choose, so I don't have to choose it multiple times. So again, if you do want to be able to see that twice in there for whatever reason, just go ahead and make sure that you don't have those labels exactly the same, and you'll be able to do that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and run this report. This one is really exciting. That it goes ahead and it's exciting for some of us and it makes some of us nervous, and I get it. But what you have now in this search, when you run a search that has the item number qualifier in there, you will have the ability to do a batch modification. So for those libraries that perhaps have set things to be withdrawn and now they want to go ahead and change the status, or whatever you might want to do, you can go ahead and just batch modify right there, and it will send those items to batch modification. Okay, So if we click on it, okay, it goes ahead and brings those items over. But notice that it just brought the 20 items over. So it's not every single thing on that list. The pop-up shows you that you have send visible items to the batch modification. So right now I have it set to 20 out of the 409. So if I wanted to do all of them, I could set it to 500. That would then be all of my visible items, and those would all then be sent to batch modification. So really kind of a neat thing to be able to, instead of like we used to do where you're downloading and uploading and all of those sort of things, you can send all of those straight over to make whatever changes you need to. So neat little feature with that one. Really, we really like that.
Donna, can I just, we had a question from the last time we talked about it. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked about staff permissions. So if a staff member does not have, hi George, does not have the ability to batch modify in their permissions, they will be able to choose batch modify. However, they can't go any further. So if they have that permission to run a report but not batch modify, they will see that. However, Koha will refuse their opportunity to go crazy on your library catalog. And the other question we had was it specifically for item numbers and or barcodes, because it's confusing as the batch modification tool uses barcodes, not item numbers. It has to have that item number in as a column in your report.
Right, so it's, I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but when they developed this, they put enough barriers in there that you're not going to accidentally be batch modifying your entire collection. And from what I understand, George, from reading the bug, if you give the column heading a name other than item number, it will not still work. It has to be item number as the column heading. Yeah, so yeah, there's quite a few steps in there to make sure it's not just accidentally, you know, change all of your bestsellers to reference books or something like that. So hopefully there's enough qualifications in there that it's not gonna destroy anyone's catalog. This is a good reminder though, if you do happen to have a staff member who accidentally destroys your catalog, that's a phone call, not an email or a ticket to us, okay? The quicker you can get a hold of us, the better, and we can go ahead and see what we can do about making any changes to help you get that back up. So, okay. And then again, you know, you do have the abilities to go ahead and download the reports, you know, that can be helpful as you're doing things. So kind of some neat things with that. I do have to say that one of my favorites though is that when you're clicking that edit button and you go ahead and update that SQL, you don't get taken back out to go ahead and do it again. You update the SQL and you stay on that same page so that you can go ahead and keep editing. So if you're like me and tend to break SQL code a lot, it's nice to be able to kind of do it one step at a time and make sure that you're not destroying anything and you haven't wiped that out. But that is a neat feature that you can go ahead and kind of make those changes without having to keep going back and forth. So there's also a new column in the items table, which has a damaged on column. So let me see if I can go ahead and find that report to show you. And basically what it does is it's just a little update, but it goes ahead and there it is. It goes ahead and matches the data structure for damaged to make it the same as what we do with lost and things like that. It won't break existing reports, but you might want to think about if you want to add that damaged on column to reports moving forward. And it will only do it moving forward. So, but you can see here that we've got our damaged on column. So you can go ahead and add that if you want to be able to run those reports. Okay. This next bug, we haven't had anybody ask about it, but it was needed, so we're going to throw that out there just in case you're one of those folks that might need to use this. But you can go ahead and have the option to set a header line for the CSV output with the run report cron job. So there may be a use case for that, but you would need to contact us about changing your cron setup for those sorts of things. So just kind of be aware of that one.
Donna, we have a question about that undamaged.
You know, that's an interesting question, Peggy. I would need to test it to make sure, but I have a feeling it would just go ahead and wipe that out because it would clear that. But I'd want to test it before I give you a 100% answer on that one. So what I'll do is we'll go ahead and check that, and then we'll add that to our Q&A on the website to make sure that it actually does go away, which is what I would expect. But as everyone who knows me knows, I can be wrong more often than I care to admit. So. Okay, so in our staff client, this is one of those little things that just kind of makes us happy. Some folks don't understand why it made some of us very happy to have this change, but a lot of times it's just, you know, the more places you see a small piece of data, the easier it is. So we know that a lot of times we need to be using the borrower number for certain things, like when I'm trying to do my reports and preview my reports. Doesn't matter what my barcode is, I need my patron number. And you can pull that from the URL, but if you have a very lengthy URL, it's a little bit difficult to see. And if you happen to be on some of the other screens like the checkout or whatever, it is another click. So this is just saving a little click. You will see now that the borrower number appears on all screens in the patron profile right here. So again, little enhancement, but can hopefully make it a little bit easier to be able to grab some of that data from time to time. So. Very handy little thing, but I do like that. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull up this next patron that we have set up as an example. Okay. So right here, we have added a class to items.itemnotes_non-public. Basically what that means is it's going to be much easier to be able to hide these non-public notes with JavaScript. So I know that this is something that a lot of staff really don't enjoy seeing in that checkout table, but it is right there. So it is a neat little feature that we can go ahead and make it a lot easier to go ahead and separate that out and hide that. So, okay. And again, you will see, like we talked about before, these handy buttons are put anywhere that we can at this point. So you have your column visibility, you have your Excel, CSV, and you can copy and print these things. So a little bit easier to go ahead and grab images, you know, or data from the screen without having to manipulate things around. So nice little feature to be able to have those. Okay. Let me go ahead and search. And for those of you that use acquisitions, this is a nice little addition.
Go back. Stay in that screen 1 second, Donna.
Oh, okay.
George is asking, the number of checkouts by item type is new also.
Yes, it is. And that's one of my favorites in there. What this will do is it's a drop down and it will show staff how many books, DVDs, whatever your item types are checked out. So if you have a patron who has 50 items checked out and they want to know how many of what they have or how close they are to their limits or whatever, you'd get a nice little summary right here. So yeah, that's a nice little feature too. It doesn't stay populated, unfortunately. You have to click on it every time you've done a change to that patron's record, like if you've checked something out or whatever. But if you're just looking for basic information in there, it is a nice little feature to be able to see what they've got checked out. And that can help with troubleshooting sometimes too. If you can't figure out why they can't check something out and it doesn't look like they might be at the limit, you can look here as a first stop and say, oh no, it is recognizing that you've got 5 DVDs already, so you can't have a 6th one. So yeah, it's a nice little feature that we've got there. Okay. Let me go ahead and go to our search. Okay, so here under the acquisitions details, there's a new feature. And basically what that does is it goes ahead and in the past, it used to link just to the vendor in the basket. You now have the ability to be able to link to the invoice in your acquisitions data. So again, just a shortcut to be able to access it a lot faster. Oh, so apparently we have some JavaScript for always displaying that new feature. So we may have to hit your site and poach it, Barbara, so we can go ahead and access it. Because I know that's something that's a really nice little feature to be able to see how many of what we've got checked out at any given moment. So, okay, excellent. All right, so system preference. This is the one that y'all were asking about. Here we go. So it is called Staff Login Instructions. Okay, and something that you're very similar to, so it is under Staff Client and Appearance if you're looking for it instead of searching. It is very similar to the way you just drop down that box to edit that HTML, and so you can go ahead and put whatever text you want in there that people will see when they log into the Staff Client. So you can go ahead and customize it. You can make it a happy note, you can make it a make sure you do this note, whatever it needs to be. And again, since it is very easy to change, you could always use it for reminders also. As a, hey, don't forget that today we're doing inventory, so, you know, stop using the computer at 5 o'clock, whatever you want to make up for it. Or if it's the boss's birthday, maybe you say, hey, don't forget to wish the library director a happy birthday. I'm being a little facetious with that, but it does give you a huge amount of flexibility as far as what information you want to be able to put there. And since most everyone is using individual logins, there's no excuses of, well, I didn't see it, because you do have to put that in there. And George, you are absolutely right. The day after an upgrade, it'll be a great place to put in bold lettering, clear your cache. So that one is called Staff Login Instructions, and that is a really nice feature. Again, it's some of these little things that we just really like to have that do make our lives a little bit easier. So there is another, yeah, it is a great idea. I agree, Heather. So there is another system preference that is used in the purge, which I just think is funny considering the movie series by that. But anyways, so under purge, it's called Purge Suggestions Older Than. And this is something that is typically set up in your cron job, but what we can do is we can take that out of the cron job and leave it here so that you can change it if you want to. So for instance, if you typically have, if you typically keep your patron suggestions for 30, 60, 90 days or whatever, you can go ahead and change that. So perhaps, you know, you're finding that 90 days is too long. Maybe you go ahead and change that to 30. And that's something that you can do yourself. You don't have to contact us to go ahead and change your cron job. You can go ahead and if you use this set preference, let us know. We'll pull it out of the cron job and you can go ahead and make those changes yourself. Okay. Okay, let's go back to our libraries list. Again, a little thing, if you have libraries that have multiple MARC codes, there is a column on your libraries group or on your libraries section where it does go ahead and show the MARC organization code. So you can have that posted right there. Before you actually had to go into the system, into the editing functions to take a look at this, but now you can go ahead and look at it right there. Okay, so this is another neat little, again, little things that just make our lives a little bit easier is what this is all about. So if I'm searching the catalog, I now see a specific authorized value description in my search results for lost items. So you can see here that instead of just saying lost like it used to, I can see that this is lost and paid for. I can see that this is claims returned. I can see that this was a dusty. So again, it gives you those abilities to be able to see what that lost status is instead of just lost or damaged. Okay. For any of y'all that are using Novelist, you'll know that with the last upgrade we had some changes, and so we had to do a workaround in order to get Novelist to work on the staff client. pleased to let you know that that has now been fixed. I can't demo it because we don't have the novelist set up, but basically what it does is it adds a new staff client profile for the novelist information. And it used to cause, what happened is we used to use the same value on the OPAC and the staff client, and that caused for some really weird things happening because obviously they have different URLs. So now that this has been fixed, we can go ahead and update those. So if you have that novelist, definitely take a look at that. Let us know if you need any help with updating your system preferences for a novelist, and we can go ahead and do that. Okay. In the currency and exchange rates, there is now the ability to customize and display the symbol for currency. I know that this is something that not many folks use, but it is there. Okay, so under acquisition parameters, currencies and exchange rates. Okay, and you see that we have the ability to go ahead and change some things in there, decide which ones are active and which ones are not. So neat little feature there too. Okay, so in inventory, again, not a lot that I can show you without actually going through the inventory process. So this is just kind of a perk your ears up and listen to it as we talk about it. A couple of little things in here. So the inventory table goes to the detail page instead of the marked detail page, which I think is a little bit more helpful. So it goes to that normal view instead of the marked view when you're working on your inventory. You're looking at things. And then two small but really helpful things. So if you upload a barcode file in your inventory tool, then the compare barcodes checkbox is automatically checked. You don't have to manually do that. So again, that's a neat little quick feature. In most cases, this is what you're looking for because you want to be able to compare anything that was missed versus what you actually found on your shelf. And then if that box is checked, then the skip items on loan is automatically checked also. And so that was the one down here. Because again, you don't want to compare your lists showing things that were actually checked out, which are technically not missing. So it just makes it the process a little bit more streamlined, a couple less checks that are allowed in there too. Another neat little feature is that you can use additional separators in your barcode files. So typically what we would tell people is to have it one list, one barcode per line, but now you can use /n, /r, it can be a pipe, it can be a comma, it can be a semicolon, and it can be a hyphen. So those are all valid separators now between barcodes. So again, little thing, but able to go ahead and make your life a little bit easier perhaps if you're updating information that way. Okay, so the next one is going to be under Patron Lists. And again, just saving a couple of clicks. So if I go ahead and want to add patrons to my list, I can enter multiple card numbers at once. So I can just go ahead and scan barcode numbers if I want to, or just type them in however I want to do it. But it's a neat little feature to be able to go ahead and add lists. The idea that I immediately came to is if I was doing an off-site event, like if I was going to a nursing home or something and I was going to be setting up cards, I could just go ahead and scan a whole bunch of cards, add them to that list so that I know that all of those cards are residents of that particular nursing home or something like that. And I'm sure you can come up with a lot of other reasons for that too, but it's a neat little feature that I can just go ahead and add in those barcodes instead of having to individually search for a patron. I can go ahead and add the barcodes. So that's a nice little feature too. Okay. As far as some of the critical bugs that have been, yes, George, exactly. When you add a whole classroom of students at the beginning of each school year, these are all Mrs. Jones students. You can just scan those barcodes in or add them in however you want to, copy and paste them, and you're all set to go. Yeah. Okay. So in 1711, we were very excited that there was a new feature called block return of lost items. It was a new system preference, and we all thought that that was such a terrific idea, and we absolutely loved it because most libraries don't want lost items being returned. And so that was a neat little feature to let people know that this is a lost item. So even if you do want to return it, it is something that staff need to be aware of so that they can go ahead and take appropriate action with it. The only problem was that it didn't actually block the item from being returned, which we all knew. So now that has been fixed, and this actually blocks, it now actually blocks the return of an item. So checking it in does not mark it as found, it keeps it as lost. So it's really kind of a neat ability to be able to go ahead and actually do what we were hoping it would do in the first place. Okay. Something else that again, this is not going to apply to a lot of libraries, but if y'all are one of the power users out there, you might want to be aware of it. There is a bug that suggestions weren't updated when one biblio was merged with another. And so when you were ordering a title from a suggestion, from a patron suggestion, it creates a very brief bibliographic record. Previously, when you merged that into an existing better bib, it lost the suggestion information. So you couldn't necessarily track who had asked for it if you needed to place a hold on it or things like that. Now it doesn't. So again, a small addition, but it really makes it easier that when you are doing these merging of these suggestions to a full bib record, it goes ahead and keeps that information in there. So you also do now have the ability to link orders. Not sure how often people are actually creating baskets from subscriptions. Previously, if you did so and then edited that order, the link between the subscription and the order was lost. Now it's maintained. Again, a little thing, just kind of be aware of it. There are a whole bunch of new system preferences. I'm just going to touch base on a couple of these real quick. I'm not going to demo them. There is an auto switch patron one. We'll cover that more in circulation. But basically what that does is when you're in checkout function and you scan a patron barcode, it'll automatically change to that new patron instead of thinking that it's a book that needs to be checked out and giving you an error message. So again, little functionality, but a neat little option to do that. Protect super librarian privileges is another system preference. Basically what this does is it says if you're not a super librarian, you can't make anybody else a super librarian. That was a known bug, that if you had permissions to change staff permissions, then you could make other people super librarians even if you were not a super librarian. So now you can't, so that's a good thing. See, the other ones we have talked about these, so we are all set. There's one system preference that has been renamed, and it was no login instructions, and that was in the OPAC main user block. That's now been changed to OPAC login instructions, which makes a little bit more sense since that's what most libraries are using that for. There is a new authorized value category. Again, we talk about this more in circulation, and we covered this in our overview, but you now have the ability to have a drop-down box in payment of your patron fines that you can go ahead and make that an authorized value and choose what you want in there. So for instance, and I'm trying to think if I have any patrons that have a fine on them. I think I cleared my fines off. Oh dear.
I probably have fines.
Oh, Kelly always has fines. Let's go and see. Oh, no, we can pull this one. There we go. Okay. I have so many aliases, I don't know who I am anymore. So here we go. So I'm blocked because I have well over the limit, but if I go into my fines section and I go to pay my fines, okay, I'm going to pay my selected. I have this drop down right here of payment type. And so we've added Amnesty, cash, credit card, and food drive. But you can go ahead and make that whatever you want that to be. So if you need to know if it's a fine cash or a fee cash or things like that, you can go ahead and add those. And that is just an authorized value called payment underscore type. No, it does not work with write-offs right now, George. We're hoping that that'll be added to that. But typically, I mean, my thought on this, and I'm not a developer, I always make that clear, is that I don't know that they necessarily would because it's just a write-off. So you either write things off or you don't. So I don't know that they're going to add that to it. You would probably need to use the notes field if you wanted to add a comment as far as why something was written off. Although you would have the option, you could make write off one of these items in that authorized value of payment type. So you could have, write off with multiple reasons in there, and have them change that. It would be a workflow change, but that is something that you could do if you wanted to. You would just need to be aware that that would show up under that payment type as opposed to write-offs. And there is, yeah, no, ignore that. So, okay. Okay, so one new notice. Cancel hold on lost, and that goes along with a system preference that if you are using item level holds and if you are using the holds to pull, you can mark an item lost from there, and that has created a new notice that will go ahead and cancel that hold and send a notice to the patron saying this item has been lost. So if you meet those first two criteria, that you do item level holds and you only use the holds to pull, there is a new notice that goes along with that. And then the routing list, which again, not many libraries use, but it is there. It used to be called R list. That is now called serial alert in your notices. Okay, and so, I know I talked really fast, but that brought us to the end of all of our updates on administration and reports. So we have just a couple minutes left. Y'all have been great about asking questions as we go along, but is there anything you want me to update? Oh, nope, so George has an update for us. So he flipped over and ran some reports on his test server, and on reports where he has the collate UTF parameter, he does get an error when it says that is not valid for UTF-8MB4. Interesting. Okay, so that change may have an effect on the reports, particularly if you have some really involved reports, which I know, George, you do. So we definitely will need to be aware of that, and see what we need to do about helping get that updated and fixed, and what we need to do with that. So thank you for checking that, George. I really appreciate it. So that is something to be aware of, is that it does have that. Oh, Todd popped in. Hey, if y'all don't know Todd, he's one of our amazing support folks. And he swapped out we're all waiting with bated breath to see the rest of his response code that George mentioned with what's in the SQL. Okay. So just updating that SQL statement should let you go ahead and do that. So we'll definitely take a look at that and see if that's something that we might be able to do a blog post on, even though frankly most of this is way over my head. I'm not an SQL expert by any stretch of the imagination, as I know Carolyn's watching, as she well knows. So, but we'll go ahead and see what we can do about providing some information to help update that if you do happen to have any of those sorts of things. What I would say is if you are aware that you have that in any of your reports, just shoot us a ticket, and we can go ahead and make sure that we update that information.
We can also put, if it's an easy fix, we can put that on the Q&A page as well.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I see that Todd just went ahead and added that in there. So we will put that up on the Q&A page so that you know how to go ahead and update those reports in there. So just to add that information. Almi, absolutely. We have a lot of webinars on that, through that education page on our website. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. And then we also do have, if you just search, Bywater Koha YouTube, you'll find our YouTube channel, and we do have a lot of posts up there too, but that is also linked from our education page, our education section. So definitely take a look at all of those sorts of things. We do have a lot of resources available for you, and we are more than happy to send you information on anything what you need to do. So, all right, I am going to go ahead and stop the